Good evening and welcome to the inaugural 2023 meeting of the Historic Preservation Board. I'm Tom Combs, the board chairman. We'll get right into our agenda, call the meeting to order. First item is approval of the minutes from the November meeting. We didn't have a meeting in January. Did everyone have a chance to get a look at them? Any comments, edits? Motion?
Move, please.
So we have a motion and a second?
I'll second.
And a second. Any other discussion? Okay, the minutes are approved. Going down our agenda, the first item, we've got two certificates of appropriateness tonight. The first is 2132 5 Mile Line Road. Ms. Miles is here. This is for the approval of a vinyl sign for Fur Baby's Pet Spa. I think we're all familiar, if you had a chance to look at the picture, all familiar with the building and probably with the sign out front. It's in the picture there that Paradise Travel is coming out, and on the left side, Fur Baby's Pet Spa is going in. Comments? Any questions? Concerns?
Is that the color of the sign, the pink and the black?
Yes, as I understand it, that is the color.
Two things. I really appreciate that they do these sign programs. I think that's a great thing rather than see 40 million signs. Mm-hmm. And number two, I don't know if this applicant put this together or you helped, but it just was so simple it worked. You know what I mean? It was like you didn't have to work to see what was going on. So I thought it was so.
Yep, that was all the applicant, and she's here tonight if we have any specific questions for her.
Any other comments?
I'll
We
make
have
a motion to
a motion. Okay, we have a motion and a second.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Great, all right, and you're all set, and I'll reach out to you tomorrow for finalizing everything, but you're free to go. Thank you so much for being here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, second item is down at the Daisy Flour Mill, 1880 Blossom Road. Is Mr. Blake going to join us?
I don't believe he told me for certain if he would be here tonight or not, so I think we'll go ahead without him just in case. If he comes in, that would be great. If not, I think I can answer most of the questions.
Okay. All right, the picture is up there. I'll ask the first question. The picture, the building in that picture appears to be the house that's basically next door.
Correct, so I
But
did.
the overhead, the aerial picture looks like it's on the other side of the driveway.
Right, so I clarified with the applicant, and this map is accurate. This is where the sign is proposed to be going. So it's going to be in front of the Daisy Flour Mill building, not in front of the houses. Originally, when they put together the rendering, that's why it's in the wrong place. That's where the old Daisy Flour Mill sign was, and that's why it was originally proposed there. But they have since changed their mind and want to move it to the other side of the road there, the other side of the entrance. So this map, let me find it again.
That little yellow line is
Yeah,
where-
so this is accurate, so it's going to be, I assume they want it as close to the road as possible without being in the right-of-way. So it will be maybe 15 feet back from the road, and then make sure it's on their property and to the left of the entrance there from the aerial view.
15 feet back from the road.
To stay out of the right-of-way, yes.
But right away is center of the road.
Right, so, but there's a portion on the survey map, you can see where the right-of-way is marked. So especially because it's a county road, so we have to be extra careful. But that will be something that is reviewed with the sign permit. So just keep in mind, it will be this rendering shows it pretty close to the road. It will be farther back than that and on the other side of the entrance there.
And my other question was whether they could put, instead of at the mill, at the Daisy Flour Mill, since that's how we normally recognize the property.
I think that this is they have it this way because if you, they have two locations. So they're designating the original one in Livonia as Rising Storm Brewing Company, and this is their second location of Rising Storm Brewing Company at the mill. So it's more so just a little separation to separate the two locations so that people are aware of which one is which. I think that's the intended purpose, more than a clarification and an homage rather than labeling it Daisy Flour Mill.
I like the idea.
Oh, I'm not saying either way, I'm just clarifying, that's all.
Is that the true color of the sign?
I believe so. I did talk with my coworker to the sign company, and the sign will be made out of aluminum, and then the wood shown on the bottom is proposed to be real wood. So that I believe the rendering is fairly accurate. A question that unfortunately I don't know the answer to is lighting situation. The sign itself will not be illuminated, but assuming the property owner will want to do some lighting, whether it be, front lighting or kind of the overhang lighting over top, I'm not sure which, if any.
Yeah, being black and white, it's very inconspicuous.
Yeah, I know that this is, the other location is going to have the same sign, just without the at the mill part.
And I thought that it was stone at the bottom, but this is weathered wood.
Yes.
Real wood?
That's what the contractor said, yes.
Any other questions about the color, the fonts, the printing? And it's quite a large sign, as you saw. I don't recall how large the Daisy Flour Mill sign was.
But it's probably has to be somewhat large because when you come down that hill, it'd probably be real easy to drive by it.
Oh, yeah, especially 15 feet off the
off
the road.
And the other thing is, in my mind, I thought they would come in with an old-fashioned sign somehow, but this works. I mean, it doesn't detract from the building, I guess. It's just, in my opinion, it works.
Other comments? If nothing, well, can we approve this without him here?
Yeah, if you're approving it as exactly as it is without any changes, you can approve it with him here, or if you approve it with some suggestions but not necessarily tied to it, it's up to you guys. Or if you want to hold it.
What about the lighting? Because that makes a difference.
Yeah,
if
it's
they
up.
decide to attach lights to it.
Yeah,
they'll have
it's
know
up to
it.
you guys. I was hoping he'd be here tonight so we could clarify the lighting situation. If you guys don't feel comfortable approving it without knowing the lighting situation, we can hold it till next month. It's completely up to you and what you guys feel comfortable with.
Can we just see the lighting next month can we approve the sign and then just he comes back for lighting?
I think so. I don't see why not.
Yeah, so
the
we
rest
can
of you?
approve it contingent on the lighting?
Yeah, I think, right, yes. Have it
Yeah.
be contingent on the lighting, but you guys are okay with the sign if that's how you want to move forward with the motion.
So, Mira, the contingency on lighting would be whether there is any, or
For us to see it.
whether it's what?
There will be some kind of a lighting, and we want to see it
Want to see what it is.
and approve it.
Yeah. Okay, and then as far as the location or the size, if that's an issue, that's not for us, right?
You guys can make comments on it if you'd like. It's up to you if you feel the sign is too big or the location's,
Is it within the zoning maximum
So
sign?
technically, the sign is larger than town code requires, or it allows. However, the town board can approve it to be larger, and they're going to be looking for your guys' recommendation on if you feel comfortable with the size, or if you think it's too large. So technically, town requirements, it is larger than allowed, but town board gets final say. So they can go ahead and streamline approval rather than going to the zoning board, because it's a historic property.
Does anyone think on a historic level that that's an issue? Board members? If no one does, I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we approve the sign. And if the town alters the size, that won't affect this motion. We're okay with it.
Correct.
But we are not approving any lighting. If there is to be lighting involved with the sign, they need to come back.
Okay, great.
Is that okay?
Yep, sounds good. So we'll have a second for that motion.
I second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you.
And I just love that this building is going to be taken care of.
Oh, when does this brewery open?
They're in the middle of construction right now. I'm not sure what their timeline is for opening. I think it's been pushed out a few times, so.
Is it strictly going to be for making beer, or is it going to be a restaurant?
I think they're going to be a full restaurant. So I think they're going to be brewing beer there and serving beer, and I think they will have some
They have to
food.
come back for further approvals if they're going to have outdoor seating or anything like that, or?
Not to us, because anything interior, we don't have any say over. So they already got approval for the business plan, the business model. That was already
It's just a
approved.
sign.
Yep, and so we already approved the exterior changes, fixing it up, that small addition on the back, removing the front trees. So if they change anything, they'll have to come back to the board. So anything exterior.
Building gets used.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Moving down the agenda, we have some informational items. The first being the Clark House. Now, Shannon had sent out the Bergman presentation that went to the town board on January 11th. And if everyone hopefully had a chance to take a look at it. But what I asked her to do here was to run through the presentation again so that we all have a chance to look at it together, see if we have any comments or questions. And then when we're done, it's a relatively short presentation. When we're done, then we can discuss a number of things. So you want to start to click through it?
Sure. So that, yeah, as Tom said, this is the presentation that Bergman, who is heading the project, they presented at the January 11th Town Board work session. So I think this is just going through a quick history of what they've been working on, which everybody has been here for. This is just the scope of work, which is opening it up to, this was the original
The
scope of
original,
work,
yeah.
which we're no longer doing. So we can kind of skip through. This was the conditions assessment, which was gone through last year or the year before. And then this was the list of major concerns, just kind of skipping through because we already are all updated on this part. This was the original cost estimate and proposals. All right, and then the current scope of work is to demolish the back two portions. And then Bergman is saying to either rehabilitate or replicate the 1832 portion, develop it as a town lodge for an event space, provide restrooms for private functions and public use, and then the design should complement the original Clark House but not overwhelm. And the cart barn is not in the scope of work. This is the existing footprint, which appears to be in blue. Am I looking at that right? And then the new footprint would be slightly larger in the red. And then this is an overview of, it looks like the first floor plan.
No, I did, before you click off that, Shannon, I did have a question, no, the next one. There's a little white rectangle in there that
This?
kind of makes it look like there's nothing there. When you look at the aerial view, it's all covered.
It's a
So-
Are we talking about this space right here to the
No, that's
top
the
left?
porch, but down, that little, down to the bottom middle, that little white rectangle.
Oh, this is a counter space.
Counter,
Yeah.
okay.
So this is going to be prep kitchen, and then this is a counter space that leads into the big event space with a shade that you can either have open or closed. So if you're serving food, you can have a counter to do that right from the kitchen, or you can close it if you don't want that option. So it's a counter.
Which in here is existing building?
The existing would only be this very bottom portion here, this front part here. That's the only existing part. The rest would be demolished. So the rest, the whole back portion here is all new, being proposed. So the highlights, let's see. So they're proposing a large event space, a prep kitchen, and then, let's see, they're figuring out the program use of the existing house. I think it's more so like a private area. So like if, for instance, you were having a wedding here, that would be like the bridal suite where people got ready. I think that's the basis of it. And then private restrooms on the inside and public restrooms on the outside. And then the pavilion space as well. And an entryway as well. There's just a zoomed in area of that new entryway, and then the prep kitchen to the side, and then you can kind of see a little bit better that white space is the counter, and then a coat closet, and then a peek into the event space there. And then this lower part here, the seating area and the storage, that is the original Clark house that would be saved, and then public restrooms access on the outside, and then private bathrooms on the inside.
Why are there public restrooms? Are they developing outside?
So I think the idea is that the park will be in use. So instead of, to deter people from coming into the space, if they're not part of whatever the reservation is, there's still public restrooms outside so they don't disturb whatever event is going on inside if you're walking around the park.
Nice.
It seems like they're needed over there. That park is getting a lot of use.
Yes, and I think that was also part of the intention, is that they're needed regardless of this, so it's a good opportunity to add them.
It's nice.
And these are some of the renderings from the front. You can see, so this would be the whole new portion here. This is a big window into the event space. This is the new entryway vestibule. And then you can kind of peek and see the original portion here. A nighttime view of the same thing. And then this is the back of the building. So the original portion to the right here. And then this is one of the proposed patio spaces. There's two options that Bergman proposed, this large full covering one, and then there's also a smaller one that's about half the size. Another angle. And then these are the public restrooms from the outside access there. You can see that better there. An interior shot. And then I believe to the right here at this corner, that's like the counter space, and then opens up to the big event space. So there's a couple of things that Bergman presented as far as options that they want the town board to decide on, and I think those are going to be pretty important that you guys make some sort of suggestion for based on your specific historic preservation knowledge. So for the exterior bathrooms, they're looking for input on what the material should be. So they're providing options for vertical siding and field stone. These are not the only options, of course. If you guys feel like there's something else, I'm sure that they could edit the proposal, but these are the two that they proposed with renderings. And then just the same but a different view. This is on the other side of that little area, so no access, but you'll still see the material on the other side. And then same thing, there's a decision to be made here about the full patio canopy or the partial. And then the last thing that's up for debate is what they're calling a replication or rehabilitation of the existing 1832 portion of the building. So the replication is where they would, change the interior so it would be slightly different, take out the stairs, open up this doorway, and change the layout a little bit. And then if it's being rehabilitated, the stairs stay. There's a partition wall here, or a partial wall, and then the single doorway are the big changes between the two for the interior. And then the other thing is if they're rehabbing, the basement stays. If they're replicating, they don't need the basement anymore. And then if they're replicating, it's possible that the second story would just be a clear story. They might not make it accessible. If it's being rehabilitated, they're keeping the stairs, and it will probably be private access only, so that they don't have to go too far into ADA requirements for the stairs and openings. They are going to be they're proposing to be changing the road access a little bit than what it is to make it easier access. So that's the proposal for that. And then these are the cost breakdowns. They said, unfortunately, right now it's hard to get an estimate. There could be up to a 40% change at the moment because of cost of materials, labor. There's a lot of factors at the moment. So they're hoping it will be something like this, but as you can see, the cost difference between rehabilitation and replication is very small.
But 40% do you know if they've built some of that 40% into these numbers?
This is their best guess. So this is not the 40%.
Well, this is, what is it, DJB builds?
Yes.
So that's probably a construction company?
Yes, so they must have gotten an estimate from a construction
So they probably
company.
did that estimate based on today's numbers, and numbers can go up and down.
Right,
Or they change every week.
right, especially because this project,
So
isn't happening
40%, they can
tomorrow.
go 20% up, 20% down, like 40% spent.
I'll bet on one versus the other.
And then just a summary of all that.
Well, I had a number of questions, but I'll throw it out to the board. What do you see? And
I have just a quick comment before we get into discussion about this. The town board is going to be hosting a public input session for the Clark House and the Clark Road Barn and what's happening with that. They said that we're invited, we're allowed to come, but it's open to the public, residents. They're looking for input on how to move forward, what the public thinks about both projects, and we've been encouraged to come if we want to, so just wanted to make sure you guys knew about that. It's on February 15th. It's happening right at the beginning of the town board legislative meeting at 6:30. I'm going to be there, so I will be able to pass on any comments if you guys can't be there, but in case you wanted to be there, you're welcome to.
Will they present this at that meeting?
So this was already presented to the board, and it was publicized at a meeting, but I think the plan is to have some of the larger scale renderings printed out on the screens so that everybody can see what they're looking at, so they have a reminder.
What can we comment on?
I think anything to do with it. So I think for the Clark Road Barn, they're looking for direction on what to do with it. Should it be demolished? Should it be saved? What are the potential uses for it? Benefits to keeping it, benefits to getting rid of it?
Today's meeting.
Oh, for today's meeting? So basically, I think the idea is just to start looking through any ideas that you guys have. If you have any original thoughts, feelings on some of the big decisions that they're looking for, and then making recommendations to the town board on what you guys feel and your expertise. And then I'm going to be prepping a memo to send to them on what we decided here today, basically.
Can we critique the design?
I don't see why not. Nothing is set in stone. So if there's something that you guys think should be changed, even if it's not one of the options that they're looking for, or if it's different from the options, if there's something else that you have in mind, I think it's pretty much open right now, and the town board is open to any and all suggestions. None of this is final. These are just everything that's been prepared by Bergman so far that basically aligns with what they've been told is the expectation of the project.
Does the town have the money set aside for this, or?
Yeah, so they did talk about the funding at the last meeting. I believe that they mentioned there's a restricted fund balance, which is where the money is coming from. Currently, there's $3.3 million available for it. I think that number varies. I'm not really sure. I'm not in finance. That's what was presented. I don't know exactly what that means, but it seems to me from the conversation that the money is available to do it. I don't know what the timeline is.
Is it possible to do a study or comparison if this building was rehabilitated or reworked?
Microphone, please.
Is it possible to do a study or comparison of what, if this building was rehabbed or rehabilitated for major events, how much could it be rented out for as compared to other places in the county, and when people rent places for weddings and things like that?
I'm not sure if anyone's looked at that yet. I assume someone's done
I
some.
would think a comparison would be, if you're going to rehab or rehabilitate, a comparison of what could be brought in based on the area of what other places bring in might be, give some kind of an indication of what direction you want to go in with rehabbing or rehabilitating the building.
When you say rehabilitated,
Well, I'm not sure the terminology.
because, what they presented here was rehabilitation of a small part of the
Right.
existing building and addition, which is completely new for the event center.
Right.
So are you talking about this whole project?
I'm saying, can you compare the end results of the two proposals? What rent could be brought in or what events could be charged? in
But
order-
I've seen here only one proposal. Which one is the second?
Well,
You're going back to the original one?
the original picture didn't have a
Rehabbing
rehab.
the entire facility.
No. Today, the proposal's here for whether you
Rehabilitate or
the Clark House?
Weren't there two,
To rehabilitate it or reconstruct it from new, right?
whatever was on the diagram there?
Right, so the proposal to either rehabilitate or replicate is only for that very front portion, which is the house itself,
Right.
the 1832 portion. So
Right.
I don't think, basically, the use of that portion would be the same, whether it's rehabilitated or replicated. The use of it, the space itself, will be the same for the overall event space that they're creating the lodge. So there isn't necessarily a difference in how much money the town would be taking in, whether we rehabilitate or replicate
Okay.
that front portion.
But I guess my question is could we see what's out in the marketplace in terms of rental for other locations as compared to what this location could bring in?
I assume, I don't know the numbers on it, or if someone has, I assume someone has looked into it, because someone's going to have to, once the space is built, someone has to decide how much it's rented out for.
Well,
I think what Mike is trying to say, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, is there a demand for a space that's this big? And if there is, how much can we rent it out for?
Yes.
correct. And I think if somebody looked on the Monroe County Parks Department, you can see all the different facilities and even comparable space to this. And
I don't think they have anything that big, do they?
I don't know. There are several pretty big ones.
There definitely are.
And I believe that, at least pre-COVID, they used to be booked solid.
They still are.
Yeah. So I've got to believe what Dr. Mike is saying could support this.
Yes,
a lot.
I do believe that there is enough. I mean, I didn't personally do the research, but from personal experience with looking for a lodge in Monroe County, there's not that many that are large enough to hold a big gathering of people. If you wanted to do a wedding on a budget or just some sort of a large gathering, a reunion, whatever the case may be, there's not a lot of options that are affordable. But there are some comparable spaces in Monroe County. I know there's one at Powder Mills Park that was recently redone. It's not, I don't know if the size is exactly the same as this, but it's meant for a large event space. And there's also one in Webster that is two floors right in the park there that is pretty large and meant to be rented out for large events.
I believe that if you fix this building over, fix this place over, you could compete with country clubs and other areas that have weddings and things like that. I mean, the location is attractive. You have parking. You have outdoor facility. You have the outdoors. Basically, you could attract people the way you would at a country club or some other place. And I guess that's where my thought is that we could compete, you could compete with other places.
Yeah, and I think the other idea was that the town doesn't currently have a lot of event space to be rented out. So it would also be good for Penfield residents, which currently you get a discounted rate on any of the lodges if you live in Penfield. So it's a benefit to the residents as well.
And if you go up to Abraham Lincoln Park, you got to go down that driveway, and they have a really beautiful facility. I don't know if it's this big, but it's pretty big. And then downstairs they have kayaking type stuff, and they have the outdoor outdoor access bathrooms. So if you wanted to see how it works, if anybody wants to go see it, that's a great place to see. It doesn't look like this, but it's the same model.
Gotcha.
That might be a suggestion for the 15th, is for the town to present not just the presentation, but the potential revenue.
How does that tie in with the master plan that the town came up with for Shadow Pines?
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Didn't we commission a master plan for the whole park there?
There is a plan for the park.
I'm not sure if it's related at all or in what capacity. It hasn't been talked about at the town meetings as far as I'm aware, as far as its connection.
It's a separate piece of property, and it isn't treated with the Shadow Pines Park.
Shannon, I'm not sure that this is really in our purview, but Chuck raised something, I don't know if it was last meeting, that I just thought was such a great idea. If the barn comes down, and it kind of looks like it's going to come down, is there any way that they could fit some timbers or some pieces of it into this? I mean, I know you can't answer it, but could you suggest that as a possibility?
Yes, and I do believe that's actually on the town board's radar. So when we're done with our discussion on the Clark House, when we're feeling like we're ready to move on, the next item on our list is the barn.
Sorry to jump ahead.
No, you're fine. But it has been brought up before that maybe they could use some of the materials, if anything can be saved, possibly use it in the construction of this renovation.
I know you said it was a separate parcel, but as I recall, looking at the comprehensive plan for the park, they had several outbuildings they were going to build. They had public bathrooms and a lot of facilities. So I just don't want to replicate what they've already been planning on.
I know that the cart barn, which is on the same property, it's not in this scope of work. I'm not sure if there's plans for it at all. And then the Clark Road barn across the street, same thing. I don't know. There's no plans for it at the moment. That's up for discussion, basically.
Right, I get that. I just was asking, I guess, if we're looking at if we commissioned a study to find out what we wanted to do with Shadow Pines, I think we have to associate that with what we're going to do with the Clark House, because they're even though they're separate tax parcels, they're definitely related.
Yeah, I don't have an answer off the top of my head. I would have to do some more research into what's going on in the Shadow Pines project.
Well, I think the other thing is they're using some of that ARP money to do a bunch of infrastructure improvements at Shadow Pines. So if they're bringing water and sewer in there for infrastructure, they would seem like it would be the time to tie into the Clark House.
Possibly.
It just seems like it's all related to me, not just two different parcels.
I know that when they were talking about the Clark House project, I don't think it was brought up anything about Shadow Pine, so I'm not sure. I believe it seems to me, without, digging in too deep, that they are treating it as separate projects, but I'll do more research and I can find out for sure. I'm not really familiar with the Shadow Pines project. I'm not working on that at all.
I think it's a good comment to share, though, is we don't want to replicate and want the two projects to fit together.
So if this one is going to be approved and built first, then when they get to approve and build the other one, they can delete the restrooms if they're here.
I'd like to go all the way back to the one of the first things we talked about. If all things being equal, the rehab versus replication, does our board prefer to keep the old house if we can?
In my opinion,
Yes.
yes, we should.
Is that unanimous?
If it's possible, I think it'd be
Cost is
great.
nominal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nominal
Yeah.
between the two, and I'd rather keep as much of the
And
old
it's such a
interior as possible,
right.
so.
And it's such a small piece, it's, yeah,
It's less than 1%. I
right.
did the math.
So even more important to keep it.
Yeah. Okay, so make sure that's,
Can I have a comment on design of this
of
building?
course.
I have a problem with contemporary open storefront at the end of the building. I don't think it's compatible with historical appearance of the building, especially with the windows on the side. I understand the need for large windows in the event place, but they could be treated in a different way. You can provide larger windows, more in kind with the historical character of the building. Even though it's a new addition and this building is not on National Register or anywhere, still new addition has to be compatible to the original building.
Mira, are you talking about all of the windows?
No, the ones at the end,
This
Oh, at
big window at the end
fully
here.
glass.
the fully glass, yeah,
So
that's a
you'd
very
rather-
contemporary feature that I don't believe is appropriate here. And it's not just that there is a lot of glass, but the way this glass is designed and treated with narrow mullions, in a very commercial, contemporary way.
But you still want to see a very
A lot of glass.
distinction between the new and the old, so people don't look at that building and say, is that part of the old, original Clark House, right? I mean, that's an
Correct.
important. Okay.
Yes, but they have to be of the same character,
Got it, like scale of some sort?
right?
Okay.
Even as you look, the windows on the side, they're pretty small, and then all of a sudden the window at the end is very big. So these two features don't go together.
I had a comment about the two options on the old house, if particularly with the old house being what we would prefer to be kept. The doorway to move the tables and chairs in and out, in that version is just a single door, which seems to me to be kind of tight, but I don't know why that couldn't be widened to where that circle is, the red circle, why that couldn't be widened. I guess that's a closet there, but it's probably not there now.
I think this pink highlighted, I believe that's a load-bearing wall. I think that's the problem, so you can't widen the door. I think that is why they proposed the replication, because they want to get rid of this wall and they want to get rid of the staircase, and then that opens up the doorway area. So I don't think that they would have included this if it could be removed. I believe it needs to stay if it's being rehabilitated, as that was my understanding at least.
Well, it'd make a big difference if the load-bearing wall is the back or the front. I guess it would have to be the back because of the doors to the closet are in front. Then it just seems like it's going to be tight for moving things in and out.
Chuck, I just found it says the final master plan, and it's dated 2020. Is it that old already?
Yeah.
Do we think it is? Okay. And it did consider, it doesn't say anything about it, but it says it lists the Clark House and the cart shed. But it's not really detailed, so I think your comment is kind of important, that they consider what's going on, but they talk about 2 pavilions on the north side and 2 on the south, and they're kind of vague. They say could be open or could be closed, and it says could have electricity and water or could not have electricity and water. So I think that makes it important that whoever's reviewing this takes into scope how they're gonna finalize that. So.
That may be a little outdated too, Don, because I thought that I'd heard that a fair amount of money was being spent to
bring water in?
into infrastructure for the park.
Yeah.
So I'm
And it
assuming that's what it would be.
It could be. This is 2020.
Right.
So it could have been updated. No one said I was good at research.
Now, that event center is added on to the existing building, correct?
So the proposal is to either replicate or rehabilitate the front house, and then everything on the back will be added. So the old 2 portions will be demolished, and then this is the proposal for the new build.
In the replication version for the house, the basement is not going to be accessed at all? There's no...
For to replicate, they would fill in the basement.
Slab on grade.
Oh, it's on a slab, that's right.
Yep, it would be filled in and there would be no basement because there's not necessarily a need for it. With the rehabilitation, it would be the same thing. It probably wouldn't really be used.
Any other comments or questions?
How much square feet is there just in the existing building on the ground floor?
I don't know off the top of my head, but
Can you do away with the event center and just work with these buildings?
It was pretty small.
Is it too small for an
We did a
event?
tour of it, and I was shocked.
Is it? Okay.
It was kind of narrow, I thought. I mean,
yeah, the original house is actually very small.
Okay.
I don't think you could have
Do it.
anything of any
No.
size there.
No, especially because you'd have to make the second floor ADA accessible to have the public in there, and
That's too
it's
much.
not.
Okay.
So if we were to rehab, what happens to the upstairs?
I think it would mostly be town-only access, so it would be more storage, they wouldn't really be open to the public, I think is the plan.
Other comments, questions, concerns?
And before we move through, I think we should talk about your guys' initial feelings on how you feel about the patio and how you feel about the material choice, because those are the big things that the town board is looking at. So if you guys have just initial thoughts off the bat, we don't have to make any final decisions, but I think it would be good to address those.
I'd like to see the cost estimates for the different options.
Okay.
Yeah, that was exactly my thought, that since they didn't give us a difference in cost estimate, it implied that they were about the same, and in that case, I don't know why you wouldn't cover the whole patio.
Well, I guess for historic purposes and how the house and the new event space looks as far as keeping with the historic character, are there any initial feelings about either?
I prefer the partial canopy from the design.
I do too.
Yeah, it does look better from that standpoint.
Okay.
You keep the dormer too on the on that side of the roof, bring light into the other place, more into the reception area or whatever.
Is there anywhere else stone on the building?
I don't believe so. I think everything looks like it is siding.
I believe it
Why
should be
would they be
sided.
adding stone here?
So I'm not sure exactly why. I assume to grab the attention, to show people where the public restrooms are. They didn't address it in the presentation from Berkman, why they chose these options. I think the big difference that I would just like to point out is that when, this is the connection right here from the original house to the new section. So this is the transitional area. And, a preservation standard is shown that, you have to make the new portion be distinct from the old. So I think that having a difference in material is the right way to go. But what that material is up for debate.
Why not brick? Why stone?
Maybe brick is more appropriate.
We have brick chimney.
That's a good point. Yep, the brick chimney, right.
It's just that, the stone, this face stone that being used everywhere looks fake nowadays, unless they use something more expensive and different type of stone than this ledge stone.
Right, and like you mentioned, the stone isn't anywhere else on the building. It stands alone, and why are we pointing out the public restrooms?
So maybe the suggestion is brick versus,
I don't mind siding. They could do it different color. I do not like vertical siding. Why does it have to be vertical? Why not horizontal?
Yeah, I mean, horizontal would then defeat the purpose of you being able to tell the difference, but the vertical siding doesn't, I feel like it just kind of looks like it was applied wrong personally, but that's up to you guys.
I don't know.
Well,
It's like a shed.
Looks like you said.
Yeah.
at my house, which is, I don't know, my house is 1858, so I'm not sure when this is, 1830?
1832 is the original
32.
portion.
So it's a little bit newer. The barn is part of the house, is attached, and it is the vertical siding like that.
Okay.
And that's, when you look at the house, you see the house part and you see the barn part. So, I don't know if that was popular in Penfield. I haven't seen another house with a barn attached.
So are you saying that you have a transitional breezeway between house and the barn? Or
No, I have a barn attached to the house.
Barn is attached directly. Well,
Yeah.
barn has vertical siding, right?
Right.
But it's attached directly. It's not attached with a transitional.
Right, there is no transitional. It's,
And it's wider, correct? Is that wider, the barn siding?
no,
Or is it
yeah,
same
it is
width?
wider.
That's
It's
what I
it's
thought.
more of
So you
a,
can see the difference between
yeah.
them.
So I don't know if that was we can ask Kathy if that was a popular Penfield thing, like for this area. It was for apples.
What about foundation of the existing building? Was it cobblestone?
I'm not sure off the top of my head, but that sounds right.
The existing building is fieldstone.
Fieldstone? Okay.
Fieldstone? So if they use stone here, that would be similar to the shape of the fieldstone of the original building, that would make sense.
Okay, right, which is not shown in the renderings.
I think it's all parged, so it's not something you're going to see.
Wasn't it a mess, too?
Yeah.
I mean, pieces of it were gone, and
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would be part of the rehabilitation to fix that up,
Yeah.
of course.
It would make sense to me to go with brick to match the chimney than the old part.
Right, and it shows the transition. I think the important part is to keep in mind the preservation standards and what is supposed to be done according to the National Park Service and Secretary of Interior standards. That's something that, you guys have background on and knowledge of that the town board may not. And I did give you, in the handouts, I gave you guys all printouts of some of those standards, so you have the reference of what the preservation briefs say you're supposed to do with rehabilitation, restoration, adapting an old building to a new use. Give you guys some background.
So in terms of something for us to offer for consideration, would everyone be okay if we said brick or it's a type of field stone, the foundation stones were, I don't know how you describe them, but more little boulders as opposed to the slices of stone?
Right, field stone of the shape similar to existing.
Okay.
Well, the final design would have to come back to us, wouldn't they, to show exactly what
think so.
color it is? and
Yeah,
everything?
I think this is more so as just a suggestion to give the town board some guidance, because, they looked at this with no historic, preservation insight in mind, necessarily no recommendations from you guys. So I think it'd be good to have some guidance to kind of get them thinking about it as well. But yeah, there's no final decisions being made. These are more so just first thoughts and suggestions to relay.
All right, if there's no other comments, then we can move along to the barn. I guess I talked to Shannon this afternoon. There is not an estimate for rehabbing it, if there is any thought that that's possible. But Shannon, what else do we know about the barn?
So currently, Eric Tate is working on getting an existing conditions report and a structural analysis of the barn. They're also preparing cost estimates to make the building structurally safe for the time being while a decision is made on what to do. So the priority right now is to stabilize the building to keep it from falling down while a decision is made on what to do with it. So it's more of a safety concern initially, and then going from there on what to do with it.
So they will stabilize it in some fashion.
That's the plan at the moment. It's nothing set in stone. They're currently looking for some guidance, I assume from a structural engineering company, to get estimates and to get an idea of what that would entail to make it structurally safe.
If they don't put a roof on it, or at least a tarp over it, pretty soon they won't have to worry about it.
They're very concerned about anyone getting up on a ladder or anyone going anywhere near it at the moment, seeing as how the floor collapsed in just a month or two ago at this point, when no one was even in it. So they're very concerned about everyone's safety, especially, town staff who's, that's not
Why
their
don't they
purview.
demolish it?
What?
Why isn't it demolished?
So in the upcoming information, public input session, they're asking for recommendations if people think it should just be demolished, if it should be saved, if there's a use for it. Basically, the town board is just looking for input on ideas and suggestions. Maybe the best route is to just demolish it. It's not, historically designated in any way. It's, of course, historic because it's old, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily, it doesn't need to be saved.
So does it have to be decided by the public?
It's
Can
not.
it be decided by the town?
The town board will decide, but they're looking for input from the public on what they think should be done with it.
Doesn't know the condition of it and doesn't understand, the danger of keeping it.
Right, which is why they're trying to get the condition report, I think. So I don't know the timeline of everything and how it will line up, but I think the town board is trying their best to be transparent and looking for suggestions from everybody.
Okay, any other barn comments? All right, let's move along. We do have some other business. The 2023 meeting schedule is in what Shannon handed out, so if you're anything like me, you've got to get them on your calendars right away or you'll forget about them. Some of the next items, when I looked at this, I thought that the items B and E were sort of subsets of D. The 50-year anniversary and the historic markers were sort of pieces of goals for this year. So if that's all right with everyone to sort of put those together, let's look at the oath of office and see what has to be done for that.
That's just for you, Tom. I just mostly left it on here because I didn't want to forget. You have to sign your new oath of office, but everyone else is good for the rest of the year.
All right, I already did that.
Oh, all right. Someone gave me the paperwork and it
Right.
wasn't signed. I didn't know.
If it can't be found, then bring me another one.
Okay, then I guess we're all set on that. I just wanted to put it on the agenda, mostly so I wouldn't forget.
Okay. All right, 2023, and the first sub-item is the 50-year anniversary of historic preservation of the ordinance. And the suggestion from, I think it's from November, was that we'd like to find some way of celebrating it, for want of a different word. It was suggested that if the Rising Storm Brewery was done, that might be a nice place to do it. It'd be nice if we could, if we had a Jeff Crane Award that we could award at that time. Other suggestions, things that we could do to recognize the anniversary of the ordinance. No ideas? Another thing that might be nice to do, if we could come up with something, would be to have a property to designate. And I don't know, I guess if we talked about that for a minute, we certainly don't have anything on hand, but if we could somehow, maybe with Kathy Knauer's help, identify half a dozen of, favorite properties that are older, and see if we could contact the owners and see if anyone was interested.
So the Spurgeon King report has a whole list of properties that fit designation but are not designated. So there's that list exists and is probably a good candidate, especially since that report was done in the 90s, correct?
It was done in the 90s, right?
Right. So now add 20 more years of significance to all those houses that are probably still not designated. So that list is probably a good place to start.
And however, that list is 100 houses. I mean, there's a lot of houses on that list. So we somehow have to narrow it down.
I'm sure that some of those houses have been completely remodeled and changed and no longer qualify, or possibly some of them are even gone. So I think I could probably, I've already started to go through a lot of those properties and kind of identify just properties within Penfield in general, even if they're not listed there, ones that fit designation that would be good candidates.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a big project, so.
And have you talked to Kathy about that?
I've mentioned it to her previously, but nothing in
She knows those
detail.
houses, I think, is better than anyone. And she might have some good ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And then another thing that Shannon had brought up, which I think is a good suggestion, is how do we make it attractive to homeowners to have their property designated? There'd be a certain pride in having your house designated. I honestly, the other thing that I thought of that, and I asked Marie Cinti actually if she could look into it, was whether there's any way to offer some kind of a property tax abatement, maybe certainly not a full one, but a partial. And then she went on her leave, so I know she had mentioned it to someone in the tax office here. But that might be a tangible thing to offer to a homeowner. That's the only idea that I came up with.
We tried to do that 20 years ago. It didn't work.
Didn't work?
No, they didn't want to do it, but maybe they will now.
I can look into it. I think that's probably going to be a hard pull. But I think obviously the best way to get people interested is to monetize it. But if we can't do that, I think if we can try and brainstorm something that's, easily attainable, something that we can do to make it a little more desirable. Offering people a plaque that says, that they're on the local register, the date of their house, being built, celebration for if their house turns 100, something like that. They get a note or something, a mention of some sort. Just off the top of my head, but.
Do these people that suppose are in this list, are they aware of what's necessary to become designated? Or would it be nice to maybe send them a letter and set up a meeting if they want to come in and review what they would have to do to get designated and what benefits there would be to it?
Well, we do have all the owners and the addresses, so
In other words,
letter
just
might be very
set a date, one night we're meeting, and say, send a letters to these people. If you're interested, we'd be more than happy to go over the requirements and what would be necessary to get designated. If they want to come in and talk about it, and maybe in April,
Okay.
May, just come in and discuss it. That
Good
would be-
idea. And doable, too.
I'm sorry?
And doable is something that we,
Yeah, just, set up an informational meeting and say, same time we have a historic board meeting, we'll be here tonight to discuss, any of you that are interested, to discuss what would be necessary to become designated.
good suggestion. Any other ideas on how to make it attractive to a homeowner?
I think the plaque idea is a good idea.
Yeah.
Little plaque in the front yard. Send the town down to trim it and stuff like that.
We also have on here the historical marker restoration. And Shannon, you've looked at that. Do you want to update on what you've done?
Sure. So it's been talked about previously, but I just wanted to, I jumped into it a little bit more. So I printed it out for everybody so that you guys all have physical copies as well. But I just put together an inventory of all the ones that Kathy Knauer, Jim Costello, and myself could think of. So if we're missing any, please let us know. But I went and took photos of 10 of them. I don't know if there might be more that we're missing, but 10 came to mind. And that we could find lists of. So I basically documented, the front, each side of the sign. Some of them are double-sided. Some of them, just have a plain back to them. But basically, more so as an inventory and kind of a conditions report, more or less. So you can see, some of them need more work than others. So I think trying to jump into this a little bit more, I think this project is something that's not going to be able to be done all at once. I don't think it's reasonable to say that we can get it funded to the point where we can get each one fixed at the same time. I think we're probably going to have to prioritize which ones need attention and how much it costs to fix each one. Some of them just need to be repainted. Some of them have rust. Some of them are falling over a little bit. So I think going through and kind of itemizing which ones need attention the most. I think as far as funding goes, something I mentioned to Tom is that the Historic Preservation Board has a budget allotted for the year, and it's hardly ever used. We don't have a lot of expenses, pretty much unless we have some sort of event, we don't need it. for anything that we need to run the board itself. So like for the Preservation Appreciation Day, we used the budget to buy all the food. But that was the only amount of money we spent for that budget out of the whole year. So there's money left on the table. So if we can't get it funded obviously we'll look other places first, but if not, we could maybe restore one sign a year with the remaining budget. I think obviously we have to figure out how much it costs to do this and put it out for bid and that whole process. So that's, it entails a little bit more, but I think it would be great to get started on this project because it's going to be a lengthy one.
Can we get the budget underruns for the last 10 years and put that all in a pot?
Yeah, if only.
Board member from the town board, Andy Moore, his son's Eagle Scout project was building the signs that go at the parks, and the kid got everything donated, except I think plexiglass, which is too expensive. I was pretty amazed that he got, I think it was Home Depot to give the supplies and everything.
Yeah, it was Home Depot.
And while this might be too big a project for just one scout, there might be a scout interested in, because it's hard to come up with projects.
The only thing, we looked at that with our troop, and there's not a lot of scout-type labor there. I mean, if you're looking at redoing these metal signs, you're going to have them sandblasted, and then,
Okay.
unless you completely change the sign and made what was something that was wood or something that
Okay.
the kids could make. Otherwise, I don't know that
That they can really do
there's
it.
a lot of opportunities there for,
Okay.
you probably don't want us to paint the signs.
I was just really impressed with what this
This
young
project
man
did turn out good, yeah.
Well, maybe there is some other group that would be interested in helping to fundraise, even if they don't do the labor. I'm not sure who that would be, but as like a community project of some sort, community service or whatever might fit into that category, that they help us fundraise possibly to do the project.
I ran into Jim Costello, and he had a couple of comments. One, he said that years ago they went to BOCES, and BOCES had some of their students were into metalworking and this kind of thing and sandblasting, and they were able to do it. So maybe they still have that capability. The other thing he said was that the blue signs were a gift from the county in 1959. But the gift came with the requirement that any repairs anywhere into the future were the responsibility of the town. So that was my first suggestion was, well, let's go to the county to fix the non-built trail ones, but didn't work out. But BOCES might be a good
Those are
option.
nice.
But that was one thing under the category of goals for 23 that it would be useful in some fashion. If we can't get them all, then let's pick the worst, as you said, and try to get them done. Other ideas for 2023? I think the two of trying to get something to designate and a Jeff Crane Award, I don't know if we have anything that we could point to that someone has done a good job doing. So unless something new comes up, I'm not sure we'll have an award to present.
Can I get back to the signs? Who would decide which signs need to be done first or second or whatever? I mean, how would that be structured in terms of what we want to do?
I think probably we as a board would decide priority on which ones need to be
Right.
addressed first. So
And then would
maybe
you-
ones that,
Would that be marketed out to people get a bid on what it would take to do it?
I think so, yeah. I think that has to be the town process to get bids on who is interested in doing the project and how much it would cost. So that is an expense also right there, getting, a report on how much it would cost to actually fix these. You have to pay for that service. So maybe that's just a simple, good place to start, is getting pricing and analysis timeline on what this project actually entails, because we don't really know right now.
Who would you go to?
I don't know how that process works. I haven't done it, so I would ask for advice from someone else on the town staff,
Okay.
How you put a project up for bid and what the process is for that. So this is all very much so introductory. I haven't done any of that official stuff yet, more so bringing it in front of you guys to see if you want to pursue it.
Well, I think we have agreement that we'd like to clean them up. Probably the other towns have been through this, so as a source of who can do it, maybe the towns, Penfield town staff can get a hold of their counterparts elsewhere and find out who's good at this. I don't think it's the kind of thing that anyone down the street can do.
And Shannon, they might tell you that there's already a government bid on this for services, because it's got to be at the state level. They have to have already done that, so we could go off their contract.
Yeah, someone's had to have done it
Yeah.
at some point.
Yeah,
That would
good
save
point.
you a lot of effort.
Yeah, okay. I'll start looking into the logistics of it then.
Okay, anything else in these categories of things we can do? All right, then that's the end of the agenda
I
tonight.
have one more thing, sorry.
Okay.
It was a last-minute addition that came up. Something to ask you guys your opinion on. So this application came to me because it is in a historic district, 2130 5 Mile Line Road, right next door to the other sign that you guys just approved. There is a business going in here, the Natural Path, the one listed on the top there, that sign panel. So they are in a historic district, but it was asked whether or not a project like this would need to come in front of you guys for review. It's being changed exactly as it was. The only thing that's different is what the sign says. So the color, the size, everything is the same. So the question was, can it be streamlined to not have approval for you guys, or is that something you're comfortable with? Or do you want to review this particular application and something like this in the future where it's replaced exactly as it was, not like the other one that we just did where, the color's different, the font's different. That's a pretty big change, where something like this, if you're walking by, you probably wouldn't even notice. So that's a decision I wanted to relay to you guys. That's up to you to make a decision on.
Even if we don't have to approve, we need to see it and have it for record,
Okay.
right? Yeah, I don't know how you feel about,
Right, so that's something I could do, something like this doesn't happen that often, so I don't necessarily want to set a precedent. So I guess I'm asking you guys, are you okay with the documentation of it, that I'm showing you this, you're okay with it? Do you feel like they need a certificate of appropriateness? Do they need further review?
I guess I'm not clear. This is an existing sign?
So this is an existing sign. A new business is going into the building, so all that's changed is the panel. But the sign panel for this building, I don't know if they don't let you or if they want them all to look the same, but basically the text, font, the size, everything is exactly the same as what the previous panel was. So this is a new panel, the one on top, the one that says the Natural Path, that is brand new, but does it need a certificate of appropriateness?
How did the sign get approved?
So unfortunately, sometimes people put up signs because they don't know they need a sign permit or they need
No, I'm
approval.
sorry, the big sign.
I'm not sure. I assume that that's been there for quite some time.
Yeah.
I'm not sure when it was put up or any information like that.
'Cause
So
this
they
might-
just replaced the little one part of this big sign?
Yep, just the
The
one
different-
part. So the big sign's been there, so all they changed was the one singular panel.
Because that might be a helpful thing to do in the future, is like when you get a sign like this, if you come in and say, this will be the font, this will be the size, whatever, we approve the plan.
Okay, so
the
then in
sign.
the future,
And I was just kind of hoping maybe that was done with this one.
not to my knowledge,
Yeah, it
but I
predates me.
assume that this wasn't done any time in the recent past.
I mean, the whole sign.
The big sign, right,
Yeah,
not the panel.
I mean, Mike, I don't know if you remember anything that goes
No, that-
be
I don't
before
remember
me,
that one.
that's 17 years ago.
Right, and I assume that's the purview of whoever leases out the building, whoever owns it. They decide what they want the panels to look like, if they want them all to be exactly the same like this, or if the person next door, they're fine with you putting your own design on there. So,
I would think you would want a picture of the new one.
Yeah, I think we
That
wanted-
is right. That is the picture of the new one?
this is the new one, yeah.
Oh, that is the new one.
So the sign, the big sign was already there. All
Yes,
they
no.
changed was that top panel there. So that is there right now. So it would be retroactive if you guys wanted them to come in.
Or we could decide it's in kind, right?
Right, or you decide it's ordinary maintenance, it's replaced in kind, and it's not something that requires to come to the board. But I didn't want to make that decision for you guys.
But isn't that done all the time without asking?
I'm sure it
And
is,
they
yeah.
don't
So
even
this is
know.
just happens to be something that we
Right.
caught. But that happens with all permits. People put up sheds all the time, and we wouldn't know unless somebody tells us. So whether or not they come to us is sometimes just coincidence.
To me, if it matches all the things you said, and the only thing different are the words,
Right,
under our historic code, we don't look at the wording.
right.
We just, so I don't see that it's a, to me, it would be in kind, but I'll
Right,
go
and I
with the
guess that's what
majority.
I was asking. That is what I thought as well, but reading through the ordinance, it's kind of open
It's
to,
ambiguous.
it's open to interpretation, right? Because the material is the same, but the words changed. Is that a big enough change that you guys need to review it? That's up to you.
I agree with you.
Okay,
I'm good with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
I'm good with it.
okay. And I don't think this is something that's going to be coming up too often, but if it does, it would just be, I'll come to you, say, this is the change that happened. Is it big enough for you to review? Or are you guys okay with just being aware that it happened, kind of
I
a thing?
think that'd be adequate.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Okay. There are no other items.
We move to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn,
second.
and a second, and a third. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Fourth.
Great. Thank you,
made it?
everyone. Thank you, PCTV.